On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs unveiled a phone with no keyboard, no enterprise security, and no copy-paste. BlackBerry executives watched and they laughed. Co-Chief Executive Officer Jim Balsillie said, "We'll be fine." At the time, BlackBerry controlled over 50% of the American smartphone market. Its devices were so addictive that Crackberry entered the dictionary. Its market cap would peak at $75 billion. 6 years later, the company announced a $965 million loss in a single quarter. By 2016, BlackBerry sold just 207,900 phones worldwide, a market share that rounded to zero. This is the story of how the most trusted name in mobile lost to a device it openly mocked. In the early 2000s, BlackBerry was not just a phone. It was the nervous system of global power. Politicians, chief executive officers, bankers, and lawyers did not just use BlackBerry, they depended on it. President Obama famously refused to give up his BlackBerry after his 2008 election, despite security concerns. The White House approved BlackBerry devices when other phones were banned. The numbers reflected total dominance. By 2007, Research in Motion, BlackBerry's parent company, had tripled its revenue to over $3 billion annually. By 2009, it held 56% of the American smartphone market. At its peak in 2011, the company generated nearly $20 billion in annual revenue and had 85 million subscribers worldwide. BlackBerry's competitive moat seemed impenetrable. Push email delivered instantly and reliably, physical keyboards optimized for speed, and enterprise-grade encryption that no competitor could match. Governments standardized information technology departments around BlackBerry servers. Corporations built entire communication infrastructures on the platform. Inside the company, success bred a dangerous confidence. Executives believed phones were tools, not toys. Apps were distractions. Touchscreens were gimmicks for consumers who didn't matter. BlackBerry had confused dominance with destiny, and that belief set the stage for disaster. On January 9, 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and changed everything. The iPhone had no physical keyboard, no enterprise security credentials. It couldn't even copy and paste text. To BlackBerry executives watching from Waterloo, Ontario, it looked like a toy. Mike Lazaridis, BlackBerry's co-founder, was home on his treadmill when he first saw the iPhone announcement on television. His initial reaction was disbelief. He asked, "How did they do that?" His next thought was, "It's going to collapse the network." The next day, Lazaridis pulled co-CEO Jim Balsillie in front of a computer to watch a replay of the keynote. Balsillie's response became infamous in tech history. He said, "It's okay, we'll be fine." Internally, BlackBerry's leadership rationalized their dismissiveness. The iPhone lacked a real keyboard. Business users would never tolerate typing on glass. Battery life would be unacceptable. Enterprises would never trust Apple with secure communications. Larry Conley, Lazaridis' top lieutenant, summarized the consensus. It wasn't a threat to RIM's core business. It wasn't secure. It had rapid battery drain and a lousy keyboard. But the market was already shifting beneath their feet. By 2009, app ecosystems, not email servers, were driving smartphone demand. Apple's App Store had exploded to over 250,000 applications. BlackBerry offered roughly 2,500. Consumers wanted web browsing, media, and entertainment. Developers flocked to iOS because that is where the users were. The metrics began their slow erosion. BlackBerry's US market share fell from 56% in 2009 to declining numbers each subsequent year. Younger users ignored the brand entirely. The enterprise customers BlackBerry took for granted started asking why they could not have the apps their competitors had. Most critically, the iPhone changed what a smartphone was supposed to be. BlackBerry had built the perfect email machine. Apple had built a platform for everything else. The status quo, Enterprise-first and keyboard-centric with a closed ecosystem was no longer sustainable. Instead of rebuilding from first principles, BlackBerry chose to defend the past. BlackBerry's fatal error was not a single decision. It was a strategic posture to preserve the legacy platform while half-heartedly chasing the future. The company's first response to the iPhone came in November 2008 with the BlackBerry Storm, a touchscreen device with a clickable screen designed to replicate the feel of physical keys. It was a disaster. Virtually every one of the 1 million Storm phones shipped in 2008 needed replacing. Verizon demanded research in motion pay close to $500 million to cover losses. BlackBerry offered $100 million in concessions instead. Mike Lazaridis did not see the Storm as a failure. He called it Research in Motion's first crack at a new technology, and he pushed forward with Storm 2. US carriers finally lost interest in the device by 2010. Meanwhile, leadership doubled down on physical keyboards. Jim Balsillie declared in November 2007 that as nice as the Apple iPhone is, it poses a real challenge to its users. He said, "Try typing a web key on a touchscreen. That is a real challenge. You cannot see what you type." By May 2008, Lazaridis was still insisting that the most exciting mobile trend is full QWERTY keyboards. He said, "I am sorry, it really is. I am not making this up." To those inside the company, the logic seemed sound. Enterprises still trusted BlackBerry security. Keyboards differentiated the brand. Consumers would return once features caught up. Alternatives existed. BlackBerry could have aggressively pivoted to full touchscreens. It could have prioritized developers and app ecosystems. It could have licensed its secure services across platforms, something that would later become central to its survival strategy. Instead, executives rejected these paths as unnecessary concessions. The company spent years delaying a true modern operating system, choosing to patch its aging software rather than replace it. When BlackBerry 10 finally arrived on January 30th, 2013, 6 years after the iPhone, it came to a market that had already moved on. iOS and Android ecosystems were entrenched. Developers had committed to other platforms. Enterprise customers had adopted bring-your-own-device policies that welcomed iPhones. BlackBerry 10 was not a comeback. It was an admission that the old world was gone. The response was brutal. BlackBerry 10. Phones sold poorly. The flagship Z10 touchscreen device, unveiled at a splashy New York event, failed to gain traction in key markets, particularly the United States. Within months of launch, carriers reported the devices sitting unsold in retail channels. In September 2013, BlackBerry announced a write-down of up to $960 million, nearly $1 billion, on unsold Z10 inventory. The company reported a net operating loss of $965 million for the fiscal second quarter. Sales in the quarter came to just $1.6 billion, barely half the $3.03 billion analysts had expected. That same announcement revealed the human toll. 4,500 employees would be eliminated, representing 40% of BlackBerry's entire workforce. The numbers told the full story of collapse. Global smartphone market share fell below 1% by 2013. BlackBerry's market capitalization, which had peaked at approximately $75 billion in mid-2008, had plummeted to under $5 billion. The company's stock, which closed at an all-time high of $147.55 in June 2008, would eventually trade in single digits. The fourth quarter of 2013 brought worse news. A staggering $4.4 billion loss was driven by massive write-downs on inventory and long-term assets. Sales had dropped 56% year-over-year to just $1.2 billion. Customers defected en masse. Enterprises that once standardized on BlackBerry adopted iPhones with mobile device management tools. The bring-your-own-device trend meant employees replaced company-issued BlackBerry devices with personal iPhones and Android phones. Consumers the market BlackBerry had dismissed never came back. Competitors accelerated in the opposite direction. Apple refined iOS with each annual release. Android scaled globally across dozens of manufacturers. Meanwhile, BlackBerry sold just 4.3 million phones in its third quarter of 2013, and 3.2 million of those were older BlackBerry 7 devices, not the new platform. By the last quarter of 2016, BlackBerry sold just 207,900 phones worldwide. Out of 432 million smartphones shipped globally that quarter, BlackBerry's market share officially rounded to 0%. On September 28, 2016, BlackBerry announced it would cease in-house hardware development entirely. CEO John Chen declared that BlackBerry is no longer just about the smartphone, but the smart in the phone. The brand that once defined mobile productivity had exited the business it invented. BlackBerry's collapse reveals 3 fatal errors that any dominant company should study. Mistake 1: confusing core customers with the whole market. BlackBerry believed enterprise users were the market. They focused relentlessly on IT departments and corporate buyers while dismissing consumers as irrelevant. What they should have done: recognize that consumer adoption drives platforms, which enterprises eventually follow. When employees started carrying personal iPhones alongside work BlackBerries, the writing was on the wall. Violated principle: platforms win through ecosystems, not niches. Mistake 2: defending differentiation instead of adapting to change. The physical keyboard became an identity, not a feature. Even as the market screamed for touchscreens, BlackBerry executives proclaimed keyboard superiority well into 2008. What they should have done: treat hardware as flexible, not sacred. Samsung survived the smartphone revolution by embracing Android and manufacturing whatever form factors customers demanded. Violated principle: competitive advantages expire. Mistake 3: underestimating experience-based competition. BlackBerry competed on specifications and security, features that mattered to IT departments. Apple competed on delight, an experience that mattered to users. What they should have done: invest early in software, user experience, and developer ecosystems. BlackBerry's app world offered 2,500 apps when competitors offered hundreds of thousands. Violated principle: user experience beats technical superiority. BlackBerry proves that market leadership is not protection against irrelevance. When companies mistake past success for future immunity, they don't just miss trends, they actively resist them. BlackBerry executives didn't ignore the iPhone. They watched it, studied it, and concluded it wasn't a threat. Their confidence wasn't loud. It was quiet assurance that nothing fundamental needed to change. By the time they realized otherwise, everything already had.